Hi, Empress Alecia here. I realize that this is not the most flattering angle that I could be speaking to the internet on, but our schedules are hectic, and I wanted to quickly release some newer content before Victor's words could be misinterpreted by anybody. I know that the migrant crisis is a very hot topic of debate, and I also know that sometimes Victor has a way of putting things more harshly than I would, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand our position. And even if somebody wasn't misunderstanding our position, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit further on our position as draconians on what's going on right now with the migrant crisis. The first thing I want to say is we do not live in a sanctuary city, but we do have friends and relatives that do. And unfortunately, the sanctuary cities, particularly New York and Chicago, before they even were letting in a bunch of new people, already were having huge problems with homelessness, crime, drugs, like just poverty in general, and all of the things that tend to go along with that. So I really don't understand why those cities would be chosen in the first place to take on thousands, potentially millions of new people. So that's one point. Another point that I have is that, we live in a day and age where it's like if you say one thing, if you make one statement, there are a lot of other statements that are assumed to go along with that statement, particularly for the younger generation, and for people who are on social media a lot. So I just want to make it clear that Victor and I are not like Republicans or something. I know, the United States politics is a very divisive topic, and if you say something that like leftists don't like, then you're automatically assumed to be a conservative, and if you say something that conservatives don't like, you're automatically assumed to be a leftist. So I just want to make it clear we do not fall into either one of those camps, and we have nothing against the people who are coming here themselves. We more take issue with how this is being done. I personally know that Venezuela, I have acquaintances who have family there, and I know that they have been in dire straits for some time. I know that there have been families starving, babies without food, and I'll spare you some of the details that I've seen them talking about because it's quite upsetting. I don't know as much about the other countries where people are coming here. I don't know if they are in as much of a crisis as Venezuela has been. I know for Venezuela it's been, I don't even know how many years, but I know it's been at least 5 or 6 years since I met somebody who personally was telling me about their family overseas who's, working in hospitals there, and the types of atrocious things that we can't even imagine seeing as Americans. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I don't even think we could imagine seeing things like that. But, the country overall is in a huge recession, and it seems to me that is by design, not by mistake. And I say this with the full acknowledgement that economics is made up by human beings, and it's like, it's made to be a very real thing because we've been using it for long enough, but it's not really a real thing. Like, money only has value because we say that it does. Gold only had value because people said that it did. Outside of like a barter system, these things that, we're willing to make people homeless for as a society, like, they couldn't pay their mortgage, or they couldn't get themselves into rehab, so they deserve to be homeless. Like, that's wrong, and I don't agree with that kind of sentiment. And I think that economics are constantly used against people in negative ways. But I digress. So with the current society that we live in, and the way that our economy is set up, and the way that our politicians are using our resources, it just seems very, very unwise. We are sending so much money overseas. We have a lot of negative ramifications from the coronavirus pandemic. Everything is just, I try not to swear on this channel, but everything is just, it's like a shit show here. I mean, we have people who aren't healthy for various reasons. A lot of people who are not healthy. We have people who are very poor. We have people who are middle class, but because inflation has gone up so much, they still can barely afford their basic needs. And that's like just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So it seems like, okay, the country overall is on a downhill, and the people who live here can't seem to get access to the resources that they need when they need them. While at the same time, we are openly allowing millions of people in to our country who have no means of supporting themselves here either. And they're being given preferential treatment, at least in terms of like the Tyson, the Tyson mass firing and then rehiring of the migrants. And I will admit, I haven't looked that up a ton like I normally would before speaking on it, but I had friends that were discussing it, and so I'm hoping that what they said to me was true. And if anybody takes issue with any of the things that I'm saying, or I'm saying something that is not factual, feel free to correct me in the comments, because I do not claim to be the most educated person about these things. I spend most of my days, raising our children and making sure that they have their needs met. So I only have so much brain power to allocate towards, larger political matters at this time. And like I said, Cleveland is not a sanctuary city. But it just seems like having the country in a recession and people who are hurting, and then bringing in tons of new people who do not have their own resources. Why would we do that? Are we trying to create a national emergency? That's crazy. It makes no sense. And then on top of that, is there an ad? And then it also seems to me that this has been poorly done, because I know there is an image, like there's kind of like two very differing images that are painted of migrants or immigrants by the mass media. And one is that they're like these, people who are in dire straits, and they're, innocent, good, kind people, and they just need a helping hand. And the other image is that they're like derelict crime lords, and they're just awful. And I will, be very honest in saying that for a long time, I did consider myself to be a Democrat. I do not currently at this time. And when I was, when I considered myself a Democrat, and mostly surrounded myself with people who also were Democrats, I definitely had that image that like everybody that was coming over here was desperate. However, that is not true. And I still think that for people who are, desperate and need a way out of their country, there should be ways to do that. But there are people coming here who are not desperate, and worse, there are people coming here who are a part of gangs, or they are drug dealers and have extensive drug rings going on. And I feel so weird saying that, because I know I sound like my Republican family members when I was growing up, and I would like never understand what they were talking about and just thought they were awful people and very racist. But Victor and I personally have experience with drug dealers from other countries from a different city that we lived in. And these people were off the chain. They were shooting constantly. I think they like freaking killed people. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if that's what they ended up being arrested for or not. And they were selling drugs like in our local neighborhood. They were not from Venezuela. I don't know for sure what country they were from, but I feel like they were probably from like somewhere in the Jamaican Islands, somewhere in that region. And as I was saying, these large sanctuary cities are already having issues with crime and drugs. So to allow people in with, from what I can tell, from what I understand, no background check of any kind, and potentially give them precedence over people who've been living here their entire lives, does not make any sense to me. And I am not by any means claiming that, people who are coming here are all like drug lords. I am not saying that. But that doesn't mean that some of them are not involved in criminal activity. And that includes human trafficking. Again, something we have a huge problem with in this country. Why on earth would we let more people into the country, not knowing for sure if they are trustworthy or not? That doesn't make sense. It seems almost like we're trying to form some kind of collapse, like in multiple areas. And that's not something we as draconians can stand by. It's just not, it's not right. And we have enough safety issues as it is. So I think if there was a better, screening process, and at the same time, if resources were being allocated to help the people who are already living here and struggling, that's one thing, but that's not how it's being done. And on the opposite token, I know that it is very lengthy and expensive to get citizenship here in the United States for most people. I have a friend who is from Jordan, who has been living here and studied here in college. He's been living here like over 15 years. And he asked all of us to write letters for him and, vouch for him. And he's been working here for a very long time. And he just got his citizenship. He was just able to get his citizenship at the end of 2023. That is too stringent. And he is somebody that was in dire straits. He could not return to his home for various reasons. So I know that this is a very a touchy subject, and with good reason. I don't want us to come across as heartless people who don't care about other people that are struggling unless they're within the United States, because that's not who we are. At the same time, we don't want the people who are currently living here to be like rolled out and trampled for new people to arrive. And I know that probably sounds extreme, but from where we're sitting, it looks pretty extreme. I would absolutely welcome further comment from anybody who's watching this. And if you happen to know people who are living in the sanctuary cities, or if you yourself are in a sanctuary city, or another place that just happens to have a lot of people coming in from these countries, I would be, very curious to hear your experience, and so would Victor. We always want to form our opinions and in the future our policies based on, very real data, and not on just what some article somewhere says. And that can be difficult to do in the age of the internet when there's, people can talk about anything regardless of how qualified they may be, or regardless of what their personal experiences may be. And then, of course, one person's experience differs from another person's experience. So you know, it's important. I know how important it is to remain objective and to be willing to be incorrect and to be willing to change our minds about things. So I hope that this brings a little bit of clarity to what Victor was speaking about in the other videos and to the Instagram posts that we had made. And like I said, this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and I am happy to hear from anybody else who wants to talk about it. So thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have a lovely week.